Welcome to The Kingdom View. I am your host, Luann Toposky. Thanks for joining us. Come on, let's see what God has for us today. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Kingdom View. We're so glad you joined us again today. We have the team of Exposing Narcissism back with us today. I'm so happy to have them back. You know, today we're going to talk about the other side of narcissism. You know, narcissism doesn't necessarily start when you're an adult. It actually starts when you're a child. So we have to remember that, because there are things that have happened within their lives that, you know, gave them this learned behavior, and sometimes it's generational. So with that being said, let's introduce our panel again today. We have the wonderful Michelle Renee Hammer back with us today, and she is a licensed professional counselor, certified pastoral counselor, #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, and breakthrough coach. She's a CEO of twin programs that she founded herself. Michelle helps women break through to abundant joy-filled lives of purpose. We also have Kelly Williams Hale. She is a writer, speaker, and a leader. She's an Amazon #1 best-selling author and is passionate about equipping believers to be brave. As a confidence coach, Kelly empowers discouraged Christian women to overcome self-doubt, worry, and fear so they can live a life of significance, courage, and confidence. We also have Teresa Velarde with us. She is an author, publisher, podcast host. She's a writing performance coach as well as a potter. She found her passion and purpose through life's challenges and now helps people get their stories told in books through her publishing company, Authentic Endeavors Publishing. We also have Mandy Lee Lindsay with us today. She is a mental health and spiritual wellness coach specializing in trauma recovery. She is also an author and public speaker. She is trained in inner healing and deliverance, psychology, and Christian counseling. She is a survivor of many things, including narcissistic abuse and sex trafficking. So that's our panel. Let's get started. Michelle, can you start us out today? What can you tell our audience about narcissism and how perhaps it even starts with childhood? What are the flags we can look for?
Narcissism, it can start later, but oftentimes does. The roots are from childhood, because when children are little, their needs aren't getting met to such an extent. There's serious feelings of inferiority. There's also a whole nother layer of the spirituality piece. But at any rate, warning signs start to happen with these kids as they grow up in their relationships. They learn these toxic, hurtful ways of getting their needs met by controlling other people out of fear instead of loving other people in trust. And so there's oftentimes signs when you are in a relationship with a narcissist that most people are not aware of because they're subtle. And we talked about in the last show, love bombing, where you're just given so much love that your head spins. And after the dust settles, though, and things start to get a little complicated, and you start to realize there's some chinks in the armor, whether it's a male or female, most narcissistic persons will start using what we call nagging. And nagging is just a way you feel bad about yourself, so you start to feel more insecure and inferior, like the narcissist feels, so then they can have a one-up on you because they don't want you to find them out. Listen, in the beginning, all of these tools are being used to keep you confused about who they really are. They're trying to paint a picture. Right. As one of our coaches say, paint a picture of Paris, but really you're living in a nightmare. Right. You don't even know it started yet. You think you have Prince Charming or Mrs. Wonderful, but you don't. You have somebody who wants you to think that. And when making you feel bad about yourself just isn't working anymore, they will start to manipulate you, emotionally manipulate you, psychologically manipulate you, all types of manipulation, including guilt tripping and the silent treatment and blaming you for things that they did. So they make you feel like you're too sensitive, you have the problem, you're the one who started it, we're only fighting because this happened that you did. If you were only more understanding, if you were only, more patient, if you were only more aware of how hard they've worked for you, you cannot confront a conflict with a narcissist because they won't allow it to exist. Because they want power and you want equality. And when you're trying to get closure on a topic or a concern or a problem, they're not with you on that page. They're trying to dismiss and get rid of this problem because they don't want you to find out who they are. See, it's not about relating, it's about controlling. And when that doesn't work, when you're still going to push ahead and say, no, it was not me, it's not okay, I'm not being too sensitive, and you try to get stronger, then you'll involve other people to triangulate and have other people say, you know what she's been doing? Have them come talk to you about how you're really being hard on the person. You're really overreacting. So now they have involved other people in your relationship. So really you get to a point where you start doubting and questioning your own sense of reality. And when they know you're doing that, maybe it was me. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I should be more patient. Maybe I could try harder. Then they start gaslighting you. And that's when they really start making you think you are crazy. Because it is you. You are right. It is your fault. Yeah, now you're talking. I didn't do what you're saying. I'm not cheating on you. Why would I do that? You're the one talking to the old boyfriend. It just goes on and on and on. And at the end of the day, when you're like, I'm done, I can't take it anymore, I do feel like I'm going crazy, and they're blaming and blaming and blaming you to the point where you find a way out because it gets really dangerous to your mental or emotional or even sexual or physical well-being, you'll think it's over, but it's not, because the other red flag of a narcissist is they come back.
Yeah.
No one else would open that door again when they know they've made all these mistakes, but a narcissist will.
Yeah.
And they think your chips are down, or you're forgetting about all the bad things, they'll start wooing you again. The love bombing to make you think, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. Maybe this time it will work.
Right.
Maybe this can happen. Maybe that'll make it better. Maybe they've changed, but they've done nothing to demonstrate that. It's all just words and flowers and gifts and promises, but there's no action. And so if all this stuff is happening to you, if any of this stuff is happening to you, you definitely at the very least have toxicity in your relationship, but you very well could be with a narcissist.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. That is so powerful. You know, one of the things that I experienced too, I actually experienced all of those, but one of the things that really was frustrating to me in my relationship is the triangulation. That was hurtful. Like he would bring in somebody else, one of my best friends or one of my kids, and that was like, you know, really crazy making. I was like, what the heck are you doing? So I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't talk about triangulation. All those other things, those gaslighting, all those things are so important for all of us to know, because you're right. No normal person would come back after they've done that, but a narcissist would. Thank you for sharing. We have Kelly with us next. Kelly, what do you have to say about narcissism?
Well, goodness, Michelle, that list, I was just being transported to like 25 years ago when I was with my second husband, and all those red flags were evident before we even got married. And we ended up breaking up, getting back together, you know, because I would kind of have this sense that it wasn't right, and I would move out because we were living together, and then he'd be coming back, and it was that charming cycle of just manipulation. He couldn't live without me, all those things. And so I remember we ended up getting married, but I have a little boy. I remember we were in the car and going somewhere, and I had my little boy, and we were trying to have a conversation. I wanted to share some information with them, just, I don't know, maybe it was a concern I had, but he kept cutting me off, you know, wasn't going to be open to hearing anything I had to say. And I just remember that feeling of being so suffocated, and I literally just couldn't breathe. And so I ended up getting into counseling through my work, you know, the EAP, which is Employee Assistant Program. And when I realized, the counselor gave me a book, that it was like a light bulb went off. And I had no idea that these behaviors were happening, and it was verbal abuse. And so it was just amazing that there was a word for, you know, kind of what I was going through. but just such a sense of relief that other people, that I wasn't alone,
right.
you know, that this was happening with other relationships. And so there was a time where I was able to start working on myself. You know, and a lot of times the other side of narcissism are the women involved with men in these relationships. I had no sense of who I was, you know, and so when you find a man who has all the right words to say, you know, I was very young and kind of seeking love and just finding someone that was going to love me and charming, and so finding my own identity, especially in Christ, once we did separate and get divorced, and I renewed my relationship with God. And because I always had a relationship, but when I really started digging in the Word, and you know, they say that there's revelation occurs when you start getting into the Word of God. Like, you can have a head knowledge from maybe your parents and those kinds of things, but when it became personal for me is when life really began to change. But I'll tell you, he did come back. You know, even after I had gone through my own development and personal development, he would come back and charming and wanted to go out for dinner.
Right.
But, you know, there's an awareness. Once you have an awareness that you're involved in a relationship that's got this potential narcissism and the manipulation and all the different things, it's just that awareness can put you on that path for freedom.
Right. I like that you brought up suffocating. Like, you didn't have a voice. Like, it didn't matter what you tried to say. You tried to convey something. He just kept cutting you off, cutting you off, and suffocating. It was like you couldn't speak. It was like it was like a spiritual battle. Right. Yep. And I've experienced that too. We all have experienced that, and maybe some of our audience has too. Let's continue. All right, let's see. We have Mandy. What would you like to share with our audience today about narcissism?
Thank you so much, Luann. Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Kelly, for sharing your experience, because I can definitely relate to everything that you are saying, and all of those red flags that Michelle shared at the beginning as well. You know, I definitely identified with each and every one of them. You know, it's just such a shame that we didn't have a manual to look at pre-narcissist, if we were involved with a narcissist, that listed all of those red flags. But, you know, one of the things that I found myself doing when I met my now ex, and, you know, I found myself in this space where I knew that he had all of these roots of trauma. I knew that he was hurting. I knew that there was something very, very wrong with him, but I felt like I wanted to, like, save him. I felt like, okay, I'm going to be the one to make this guy better. I'm going to be the one to, you know, make him be who he was meant to be. And, you know, I kind of found myself kind of swooping in there and wanting to, you know, like, nurture him back to health. But the problem with a narcissist is that, one, they don't think there's anything wrong with them. They really play a victim card with you to get you to feel bad for them, to kind of suck you into their toxicity, but they really don't want help. They don't want to get better. And the only thing that ends up happening is that you end up getting really hurt badly, and you think that you're going to help them, and they play that victim card so well, and they actually target you because of the level of compassion that you have. And a lot of women, you know, they end up getting sucked into these cycles, and they think, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? But the truth is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You're targeted because of what is right with you. And what is right with you is that you do have that level of compassion and that level of love. But it gets so distorted and so twisted when we are in a relationship with a narcissist that we end up becoming something that we never really were. So our empathic side ends up getting so distorted and so twisted that we end up in this disgusting, just bipolar relationship with these narcissistic individuals, you know, where we end up being so beat down and so degraded and so put down on the bottom end of the spectrum that our compassion ends up being our worst enemy. So, you know, I also like to kind of speak into this space here too, where it's not just romantic relationships that this occurs. this also occurs in familial relationships. This occurs in pastoral relationships. This occurs in, teacher-student relationships. This occurs in all kinds of different relationships at work. I know we touched on this in our last panel, but there's a role that we end up getting put in, especially in like a toxic family system. Let's kind of just shine a light here into the narcissistic familial relationship. That role of scapegoat that you get placed in a toxic narcissistic family system, when you are the empath, when you are the compassionate one, is really, the place that I think a lot of us find ourselves in, and a lot of people that, are and end up being in these narcissistic family systems. They end up being that scapegoat where the rest of the family, they peg everything on you, they dump everything onto you. You end up always being the one, that is the bad person, the black sheep, what have you, because they need that. They need you in that role in order for it all to make sense, so that they can feel better about themselves, so that they can not have to face their own demons, if you will. And this is passed down from generation to generation to generation. And until someone rises up and says, no, I am not going to allow you to put me in that role anymore, and starts getting the healing and starts breaking those generational cycles, this will continue to be passed down. And this is kind of where I found myself in my family system, but I no longer allow them to put me in that role. I've kind of risen above, and I've broken the mold, and I've kind of broken free from my family system, and it has kind of upset the dynamic, if you will. But at this point, it's like we all have to start upsetting this dynamic. We have to shine a light. We have to be brave enough. We have to find our voice. We have to come into ourselves. We have to say no more. We really have to align with the truth of who we are as blood-bought daughters of the King. And, that's kind of where I feel like all of us here on this panel are at in our lives. We are starting to shine the light and starting to get our voice, and we are starting to wrap language around what happened to us and giving that same language to the people that are listening to us as well. I just love that Kelly shared about her ex and, the story that, she just felt like she was suffocated. And I felt the same way so many times, especially with my second husband. He was a covert narcissist, and go figure, I met him at church, right? We always think, well, you meet somebody at church and it's going to be okay. But a lot of times, they hide behind that cloak of religion and church. And, I had a lot of the same experiences. So Kelly, I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Also, Mandy, that was powerful. It does start often, more times than not, in generational cycles. And I have seen that in both sides of the family, where, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that on both sides. And then, boy, did it, I didn't really think it was a big deal. But when I married into it, that was like, what just happened? And then I never really wanted to marry anyone from the church because I never thought I was good enough. But I met my husband there, and my ex-husband now. But anyway, it was the worst experience ever that I had ever been. So you're right. They sometimes you can't tell. You can't tell. And, but there is hope for them, I think, at some level, but they have to acknowledge that. But you've also mentioned, one of you mentioned already, they don't really want help. And, even though I would pray for my ex-husband and he would come back, and I could tell every once in a while, he would say, what have you been doing? Well, I had been speaking in tongues for about an hour during that time period, because I really felt that's what the Lord wanted me to do. And then to have that phone call and him saying, what are you doing? Well, I knew the Holy Spirit was getting a hold of him. And so he would come back, and it was like this back and forth. But until they decide for themselves, then there's nothing you can do except help yourself. So thank you so much for sharing. Teresa, could you share with our audience some more about the whole narcissistic subject?
There's been so much good said, and we're all cut from the same cloth, girls. We all have the same type of personality, the compassion, the love, the tenderness, the things that they look for. The narcissist looks for with their charm and their grace and everything that sounds so great, and then it all blows up. So, one of the things that was really prevalent in my relationship is something that it's a buzzword that people are using nowadays. It's called gaslighting, and I think Michelle talked on that a little bit in the beginning. My ex was a football player in college, and Sunday, I was what we call a football widow, Sunday afternoon football widow, so, and if I didn't have something to do, or if I did have something to do, he would convince me to stay home and watch the game with him if he didn't have some place to go. And sadly, I'm not into football, but I do like to read, I like to crochet, I would sit on the couch next to him so he would watch, he wouldn't be alone to watch the game, wanted me with him. So, and a lot of women would think, oh, that's so good, he wants you with him. But when he takes the book that you put down, when you get up to get a glass of water or go to the bathroom, puts it away, and then you come back and you say, what happened to my book? I don't know, you must put it away. It's like, you think after it happens more than once, you think you're going crazy. You think you're going nuts. Like I would, other things, like I get up in the morning and get my son off to school and go back to sleep if I had to go to work late in the afternoon. And somewhere along the line, before I got back in the bed, he would start making the bed. Like, do I not have the right to go back to bed every once in a while? It just was, it's devastating when this stuff happens on a regular basis. You think, oh, maybe, just doesn't know my patterns or whatever, but there's just no excuse for that kind of behavior. And then I had to look at myself and take, because that's the whole thing, we have to take responsibility for ourselves in the relationship, regardless of what's going on with them. I look at myself, and I had what I call a come to Jesus moment in the mirror one day when I was sobbing, crying, like thinking that I was losing my mind, losing my marriage, wondering what was going on with my life and how was this going to affect my son. And in the mirror, I had to ask myself a twofold question. Who are you and why are you here? And that was from the standpoint of, why am I still in this relationship? And how did I lose myself in the relationship? And then on the other side of that is the question, a bigger question of, why am I on this earth, God? What did you put me here for? Why am I here? And it was a huge question to ask. And we don't recognize that we're falling into these roles, so to speak, but we are falling into the classic role of the other side of narcissism. In order to be able to perpetuate their behaviors, they need us to be exactly the way I was in my relationship, and it's not easy when you look in the mirror and you realize that you lost everything that you were, that God gave you, and the person that you are meant to be. It's a real wake-up call. And getting out is another story.
Right, absolutely.
Because we've said it before, they come back.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And it's like you can't get rid of them because they cannot exist without us. And so when we cut them off, they'll just find someone else. And so thank you so much for sharing, Theresa. That's really, really important information for our audience to know. All right, we want to go ahead and transition here. And what else, ladies, can you share about narcissism?
Well, I just remember one other situation, and it's kind of silly, but it was regarding counseling, and my counselor was talking to me about really doing the things that I wanted to do, as opposed to always catering to the needs of my husband at the time. And so I think a lot of times women forget to care for themselves, like Mandy mentioned, that we want to give the love and support and caretake and kind of be that savior, that person that's going to help our partner. And so he drank coffee. I did not, but I would make coffee every morning. And so I remember deciding I didn't want to get up early to make the coffee. And when I didn't make the coffee, oh my goodness, you'd think that I had just, burned the house down. It became a huge deal. But it was, when you start to assert yourself, it does, topple that apple cart.
Right.
Like it's becoming different. And that's the first step to really gaining that identity, like Theresa mentioned, really recognizing how important and valuable you are. And I just love and think it's so interesting that we're all now using the voice, excuse me, that someone tried to cut off.
Right.
And so God's purpose still is relevant. Still, God doesn't give up on us if we've made a choice and are in a relationship, whether it's our choice or not. But He redeems that. Nothing is wasted. And so if you're in a situation like that, know that there is a way out, and that God might be using your experience and your, your survival story to help somebody else. So I just love that I'm in the presence with you wonderful women, and that we have this opportunity to really show others that it's possible and that God can still use you.
That's good, Kelly. Yeah, yes, we are examples of how to get out and to live our lives as we've been created. It was not easy, but you can do it, and we're all here to help you. We're all coaches in one way or another.
Well, Luann, if I could just take a moment, and I first of all just want to let everyone that is listening know, if you are stuck in the toxic web of a narcissist, do not stay there. Get some help today, because there's help and there's hope. And this panel of women right here, we are a powerful group of women, and we have all broken free. And we want to show you how to break free too. We're actually hosting a retreat this summer in July, from July 15th through the 17th, 2022. It is in person in the beautiful Lancaster County. And if you want to sign up and you want to hear the way that we have broken free and how we can show you how to break free too, go to www.freedomreigns, that's RAINS, retreat.com. And we will be happy to have you as a part of our movement. We are birthing a movement, ladies. Come and join it. Get your voice back, get your power back, and never again be a victim of narcissistic abuse. We love you all, and we want to show you the way.
All right, thank you very much. Theresa, last word. One more thing, real quick.
I just want to say I am just excited for what Mandy just said, that we are absolutely going to show you how to live your life on the terms that God gave you.
Amen.
And not the scripted life of someone else.
Super. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, audience, for joining us today. We'll see you next time on The Kingdom View. God bless you. If this message has blessed or inspired you in any way and you would like to support The Kingdom View, go to thekingdomview.com and click on the donate button. All gifts are tax deductible.